표현할 수 있는 음악이라고 생각을 해서 그런 레퍼토리를 준비를 하고 있는 거니까 같이 즐겨주시고 같이 공유해 주시면 감사하겠습니다.
Held its first debate over the weekend.
The economy is expected to expand 2.5% this year.
Korea's ties with its global partners on the sidelines of the Status UN summit.
A massive drone attack on Ukraine overnight on Monday and Tuesday.
Arirang.
Hello and welcome to our morning edition of Arirang News. We begin with these stories making the headlines at this hour. South Korea's President Lee Jae-myung has met with Japanese Prime Minister Takaichi in his hometown Andong. The two leaders agreed to work together on energy and supply chains amid the ongoing conflict in the Middle East. With just one day to go before a planned strike by Samsung Electronics union workers, the company and its labor union resumed talks this morning over pay and bonuses. Around 45,000 workers are expected to walk off the job for 18 days starting tomorrow, unless a deal is reached, potentially impacting Korea's economy and global supply chains. U.S. President Donald Trump says Washington could strike Iran again if negotiations fail, saying he had been an hour away from ordering a tap before postponing it. Meanwhile, Iranian state media revealed that Tehran's latest peace proposal involves ending hostilities on all fronts, including Lebanon and the exit of U.S. forces from areas close to Iran. President Lee Jae-myung and Japanese Prime Minister Takaichi had a meeting on Tuesday in Lee's hometown of Andong. They agreed to bolster cooperation on energy and supply chains amid instability in the Middle East. Our Blue House correspondent Yoon Jang-min reports.
The South Korean president himself received his Japanese guest in his hometown of Andong, along with traditional honor guards.
시골 도시까지 오시느라고 너무 고생하셨습니다.
President Lee Jae-myung and Japanese Prime Minister Takaichi reaffirmed on Tuesday their bilateral partnership in the face of global uncertainties.
취임 후 벌써 네 번째 이렇게 만나게 됩니다. 그야말로 한일 간의 셔틀 외교의 진면목을 보여주는 것이라고 생각합니다.
I believe it's very important that we continue developing good relations between Japan and Korea through the leadership of you, Mr. President, and me to play a pivotal role for a stable Indo-Pacific.
The leaders have agreed to strengthen cooperation on supply chains and energy supply amid instability in the Middle East.
양국 간 LNG 협력을 확대하는 한편 원유 수급 및 비축과 관련한 정보 공유와 소통 채널 또한 심화해 나가기로 하였습니다.
We agreed upon strengthening bilateral energy security, including energy supply and a swap arrangement on crude oil, petroleum products, and LNG.
The two leaders also reaffirmed the importance of the trilateral cooperation with the U.S. President Lee also called for South Korea, Japan, and China to cooperate and seek areas of common interest. On historical issues, they agreed on specific procedures for DNA analysis of the remains excavated from Chosei coal mine in Japan, where Korean forced laborers were killed when the mine flooded in 1942. Also discussed was regional peace and security, including North Korea. After dinner, the leaders watched a Korean traditional firework festival called Chulbulnori, combined with a pansori performance. The Blue House says the welcome for Takaichi has been arranged to match the level of a welcome for a state guest, hoping it'll serve as an opportunity for the two leaders to further strengthen their personal bond and trust. Yoon Jung-min, Arirang News, Andong.
And now for a closer look at the outcome of the meeting between President Lee Jae-myung and Japanese Prime Minister Takaichi. We're joined today by Dr. Kim Mi-kyung, senior researcher at Gyeongsang National University, Korea Social Sciences Research Institute. Dr. Kim, thanks for coming on today.
Thank you very much for having me.
So what do you make of yesterday's summit between Lee and Takaichi? What stood out to you the most?
They were very personable with each other. They acted friendly, and they already have broken the ice at personal level. But they also tried, I think, hard to harvest the tangible results from the shuttle diplomacy. And the list of the topics they talked about and agreed upon was actually quite impressive, and both of them emphasized the importance of economic security, with particular emphasis on energy security, the supply and reservation of LNG, crude oil, and petroleum products. And they talked about AI cooperation, with particular emphasis on space exploration and a transnational scam prevention cooperation, and people-to-people exchange. They talked about tourism and cultural exchanges in particular. So, overall, it was a good balance between good personal chemistry from having had 4 meetings ever since both leaders became the top decision makers of Korea and Japan. And at the same time, they are really work-oriented. So very good balance and chemistry and goal-driven attitudes on both parties. So I think it was a very good and successful and future-oriented meeting.
And this is the 3rd time President Lee is holding a summit with Prime Minister Takaichi, right? And it's the 6th time that President Lee is holding talks with a Japanese leader since he took office just a year ago. What does this tell us about the administration's policy towards Japan?
The Lee administration, I think, is very sincere and committed to improve the bilateral relations. I mean, when we think about the past records of both leaders of Korea and Japan, where they did not stop themselves from making potentially offensive and provocative remarks about each other. In particular, I mean, over history-related issues. And Prime Minister Takaichi is still regarded as very hawkish. She has strong support coming from conservative factions of the society. And President Lee also made some remarks about Japan's attitude towards difficult and challenging historical issues. But both of them are trying really hard to stay away from provoking each other over history issues that are still unsettled. And I think they are doing their best to show their sincerity and commitment to improve bilateral relations. Why? Because they need to. We need to work with each other, because the world is on the move, and unexpected but very serious challenges are taking place in this region. So they need each other. They need to work with each other instead of creating conflicts and tensions over issues that are difficult to resolve.
Right, I'm glad you just mentioned that, because a lot of attention was on how these two leaders will address historical disputes. So how do you think they will use this opportunity, the summit, to resolve these historical issues that we have between these two countries?
One of the topics they talked about yesterday included Chose mine project. That is an excavation project of the remainings of Korean forced laborers during the colonial era. And that project has humanitarian implications. So both countries are willing to show the fact that they can work with each other for the sake of improvement of humanitarian concerns. But other issues, for instance, like Dr. Takeshima dispute, Japanese Prime Minister Takaichi mentioned about Japan's ownership of Dokdo, while President Lee Jae-myung has been consistently clear that there is no territorial dispute. So, for domestic audience, both leaders are doing what they are supposed to do. As the leaders, they need to think about constituencies and how to play the tunes with public opinion and all that. But both leaders, I think, know that they shouldn't go there when it comes down to bilateral relations. So yesterday, they were focused on talking about Chose, excavation project.
Right. And Dr. Kim, before I let you go, what do you think is next for bilateral relations?
Shuttle diplomacy will and should continue. As both leaders have been repeatedly emphasizing the importance of it, because Korea-Japan relations need good chemistry between the two leaders. And the next step would be to institutionalize this shuttle diplomacy by making some sort of governmental level mechanism in order to coordinate smoother cooperation and responsive methods where both leaders can just pick up the phone and talk about the issues as they emerge, so that they can work efficiently and effectively when it comes down to addressing the issues that can influence in positive or negative ways between the two countries. So continuity and the efforts to institutionalize this shuttle diplomacy. And I think both leaders are very, very committed to continue this form of personalized, but at the same time, very purpose-driven way of engagement with each other. So that's what I foresee, but at the same time, I think most of the people in the government would agree with such caution and continued devotion and commitment.
I see. All right, Dr. Kim, thank you so much for your time and insight today. We appreciate it.
My pleasure.
With the clock ticking down toward a planned strike, Samsung Electronics and its labor union are back at the negotiating table on Wednesday for further mediation talks. The two sides are set to be down to one final sticking point, raising hopes for a last-minute breakthrough. Our Kim Jun-ong has the details.
Samsung Electronics and its labor union resumed talks Wednesday morning on the last day of wage mediation negotiations before a planned strike on Thursday. Talks on Tuesday morning stretched for more than 14 hours past midnight without an agreement, leading the mediator, the National Labor Relations Commission, to extend talks with another session. The two sides are believed to have narrow differences on most major issues, but remain divided over one final sticking point.
One issue still remains unresolved. Most matters have been resolved, and management is now finalizing its position on the final point.
The Commission presented a compromise proposal aimed at bridging the gap between labor and management, with Samsung Electronics reviewing the offer overnight ahead of Wednesday's talks. Meanwhile, union officials remained on site overnight to prepare for the next round of negotiations.
Our union will stay at the mediation venue overnight as we prepare for the next round of talks. Thank you.
Acceptance of the proposal by Samsung Electronics would pave the way for a tentative agreement between labor and management. The union would then move forward with a ratification vote by its members. But if the company refuses or if union members reject the deal, a planned strike could begin Thursday. In that case, the government could also get involved to put a stop to the strike by invoking so-called emergency mediation, which is allowed in situations that are deemed a threat to the economy. Last-minute friction is believed to have centered on how performance bonuses would be distributed across business divisions. The union is calling for 15% of semiconductor operating profits to be set aside for bonuses, with 70% distributed equally across the entire chip division and the remaining 30% tied to each unit's performance. Management, however, argues the structure should better align with its performance-based pay principles, with a larger portion distributed based on individual business unit results. Kim Jun-ong, Arirang News.
South Korea and the United States will soon launch security consultations to implement key agreements reached between Presidents Lee Jae-myung and Donald Trump. Seoul's Foreign Ministry said this morning that U.S. Undersecretary of State for Political Affairs Allison Hooker plans to lead a U.S. delegation to Korea in the coming weeks. This follows talks with First Vice Foreign Minister Park Yoon-joo in Washington on Tuesday. The U.S. State Department said this would be an interagency delegation to launch bilateral working groups aimed at implementing understandings reached during Trump's visit to Korea last October. Those understandings were outlined in a joint fact sheet spanning both economic and security cooperation. On the security side, the two allies are looking to advance major strategic projects, including Seoul's push for nuclear-powered submarines and greater rights over civilian uranium enrichment and spent nuclear fuel reprocessing for peaceful purposes. Meanwhile, U.S. President Donald Trump says Washington could still launch military strikes on Iran if negotiations fail, despite pausing a planned attack earlier this week. The warning comes as Tehran pushes a new peace proposal and reports emerge of growing diplomatic pressure from regional allies to avoid further escalation. Our Lee Seung-jae has more.
U.S. President Donald Trump said Tuesday that the United States may still strike Iran if negotiations fail, warning that military action could come within days. Speaking at the White House, Trump said he had been about an hour away from approving an attack before postponing it following a new proposal from Tehran aimed at ending the recent U.S.-Israeli conflict.
I was I was an hour away. We were all set to go. Yeah, it was all done. The boats, the ships are all loaded. They're loaded to the brim. And we were all set to start.
Trump said Iran's leaders are pushing for a deal, but stressed Washington remains prepared to act militarily if talks break down. He also revealed that Chinese President Xi Jinping promised during their summit last week that Beijing would not provide weapons or military equipment to Iran. According to Axios, Trump met with his national security team on Monday evening to review military options. The report said several Arab leaders urged caution, warning that Iranian retaliation could threaten regional oil facilities and infrastructure. Meanwhile, Iran's latest proposal reportedly calls for an end to hostilities across the region, the withdrawal of U.S. forces from areas near Iran, sanctions relief, and the release of frozen Iranian assets. Iran also says Washington has shown more flexibility on allowing limited peaceful nuclear activity under international supervision, though the United States has not confirmed any concessions in the talks. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
Russian President Vladimir Putin has arrived in Beijing for a state visit, just 4 days after U.S. President Donald Trump concluded his trip to China. According to Chinese state media on Tuesday, Putin's latest visit is his 25th to China. The two sides are expected to discuss economic and energy cooperation, as well as international and regional issues, during the summit talks. Xi and Putin have now met more than 40 times, far more frequently than Xi has met with any Western leader. This year also marks 30 years since China and Russia established a strategic partnership, and 25 years since the two countries signed their Treaty of Friendship and Cooperation. Local elections here in South Korea are entering a decisive phase with a day left until the official campaigning begins. The National Election Commission stressed strict guidelines ahead of the intense period. Our political correspondent An Sung-jin covers the details.
With Korea's local elections around 2 weeks away, political parties are racing against time as official campaigning only kicks off on May 21st. Election campaigning will continue up until June 2nd, one day before Election Day. During a 13-day campaign period, candidates may deliver public speeches and hold debates between 7 a.m. and 11 p.m., though loudspeakers and recording equipment will only be permitted until 9 p.m. Election authorities also reiterated strict regulations against election misinformation, especially the creation or distribution of deepfake campaign materials, which have been banned for 90 days before the vote. Spreading false information or defamatory posts about candidates on social media could also result in legal penalties. Meanwhile, ballot printing for the local and parliamentary by-elections officially began on May 18th, effectively locking candidate names onto voting papers. This entails that the first deadline has passed for rival camps to unify contenders in closely fought districts, since names are already on ballots, pressuring split votes. Nearly 8,000 candidates registered for this local election, and among them, more than 500 are expected to secure victory uncontested. According to the National Election Commission, roughly 13% of the electoral districts had only a single registered candidate, which marks the second highest number of uncontested victories since local elections were introduced. The final figure could still shift if candidates withdraw before Election Day, but the unusually high number of automatic wins has already hinted at political competition and regional party dominance ahead of the June 3rd vote. An Sung-jin, Arirang News.
Good morning, I'm Chu Ji-hyun, and this is The World Now. A NATO fighter jet shot down a Ukrainian drone over southern Estonia on Tuesday after it strayed into NATO territory. A Romanian F-16 brought down the drone, which Estonian officials said was most likely aimed at Russian targets. Ukraine apologized for the unintended incident and said Russia's electronic warfare systems were responsible for steering the drone off course. Estonia said it has not granted Ukraine permission to use its airspace to attack Russia. Russia repeated a warning that it would retaliate if Ukrainian drones are launched from Baltic countries. 26 more suspected Ebola deaths were recorded in a single day on Tuesday in the Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo, bringing the total to 131 fatalities with more than 540 suspected cases. The World Health Organization Director General told the World Health Assembly in Geneva he was deeply concerned about the scale and speed of the outbreak and said 6 tons of supplies to fight the virus is set to arrive Tuesday. The virus has now reached Butembo, a city of hundreds of thousands. An American doctor who tested positive and 6 others are being moved to Germany for treatment. There are no approved treatments or vaccines for this strain of Ebola. Thailand on Tuesday cut the visa-free stay period for visitors for more than 90 countries, ending a 60-day exemption introduced in July 2024. Most affected nationalities will now be limited to 30 days, with exact periods varying by country. The Thai government cited security concerns and a confusing visa system as reasons for the change. The new rules take effect 15 days after official publication. Google unveiled its latest artificial intelligence models at its annual developer conference on Tuesday as the company moves to keep pace with rivals OpenAI and Anthropic ahead of their expected stock market listings. Google's centerpiece is Gemini 3.5 Flash, a faster and cheaper model that will now serve as the default across its apps and AI search globally. The company now says the new model is its strongest agentic encoding model yet, and code 4 times faster than some competitors. Google also launched Gemini Spark, a personal AI agent that can take actions across connected apps on a user's behalf. A new model called Omni was also announced, capable of editing videos and simulating physical environments.
Rainy and much cooler weather has arrived across the country today. Rain clouds that moved in early this morning are spreading nationwide. The heaviest rain is expected from late this afternoon through tomorrow morning, especially across central regions. The mountainous regions of Gangwon-do province might see up to 150 millimeters of downpours. Most regions will be getting 20 to 80 millimeters into Thursday, along with thunderstorms and strong winds. And this rain is helping break the recent early summer heat. Temperatures will stay cool through tomorrow before warmer conditions return again on Friday. And this afternoon, Seoul will be getting up to 20 degrees Celsius. Daegu tops out at 18 degrees, which is about 12 degrees lower than yesterday. Gwangju will be getting up to 22 degrees. Most of the rain will ease by tomorrow afternoon, so keep an umbrella handy till then.
That's all we have for this morning. Arirang News will be back at noon Korea time. Thanks for watching.
Across borders, surging forward without limits, Korea. Korean culture has moved beyond a passing trend, becoming a force that colors the world And perhaps its origins trace much further back into our own history. The true roots where this vast chronicle began, where the essence of K-power and the spirit of our people are recorded. In the 17 seconds you casually pass by, thousands of years are breathing within. The moment your gaze lingers and your curiosity is stirred, the radiant faces of our history begin to awaken. The real stories of these artifacts, stories we never knew. It begins here, now.
Wow! Oh, this is a bidding. 에너지 들어가 있어요. 우와! 맛봐도 돼요? 와우. 와, 색깔이 조금 노란색이에요. 부드러워요. You see? Beautiful little octopus shape. Yes. Perfect. That suck.
drawing more fans from all over the world. Local consumer prices continue to hover at the 2% census rate in April.
Turning to robots to allow the visually impaired the chance to better indulge in cultural experiences. Like the number of hybrid cars are registered in South Korea has surpassed 2 million with this locally developed Yuri rocket.
Arirang.
We're here to bring a new type of news show.
New insights, new styles, and new topics every day.
We are News Generation. Bringing news just for you is Wednesday, May 20th here in Seoul. I'm Isujin, and this is News Generation. Joining us today is Hyun.
Thank you for having me.
Coming in
also Niles with us today.
Good morning.
And both are here to speak on behalf of people in their 20s and 30s. So South Korea's free subway rides for senior citizens have long been seen as a sign of respect for the older generations. But as the country ages faster than almost anywhere else in the world, many are questioning whether the system remains financially sustainable. But before we get into that debate, Hyun, how does South Korea's free subway policy for seniors work today?
Under the current law, citizens aged 65 and over are allowed to use urban railway transit systems for free, regardless of the place of residence, level of income, or even travel time. However, as South Korea's population continues to age, becoming a super-age society in late 2024, problems have surfaced due to massive losses from free subway rides across the nation's 6 urban rail systems. Now, in fact, losses reached a record high last year, totaling around 770 billion won. And in response, President Lee Jae-myung, in a cabinet meeting, suggested restricting the use of senior free rides during peak hours and asked his officials to look over it by separating those who are actually going to work and those who aren't, which sparked a big debate on the reform of the social policy that is over almost 40 years old.
So what began as a welfare benefit is now raising broader questions about fairness, cost, and practicality. And that has led policymakers to consider several ways to preserve the benefit while easing the burden on their transit system. So what are some ways officials could possibly limit free rides for seniors, Niall?
Right. So one option is to raise the age threshold for seniors. And the second one, as the president suggested, is actually limiting free rides during peak commuting hours only. Another one that's been suggested is charging different fares depending on the income level of each senior.
So each option involves trade-offs, balancing fiscal realities with support for older citizens. And because this benefit has long been viewed as a symbol of respect for the elderly, any reform is likely to spark some strong public reaction. And that's why we're going to talk more about this. But first, let's take a look at the screen. The subway is one of the most popular ways to get around Seoul. Even people who own cars often prefer taking the train, especially in a city known for heavy traffic and limited parking. But as South Korea's population ages rapidly, a benefit once introduced to support older citizens is coming under increasing pressure. Today on News Generation, we take a closer look at whether the qualifying age for free subway rides should be raised, whether free rides should be restricted during rush hour, and whether fares should be adjusted based on income. As you just saw in a video, free subway rides for senior citizens have become a growing source of debate as costs continue to rise. And opinions are likely divided on how the system should be reformed, if at all. So let's find out where our panelists stand on this. So should the age for free subway rides be raised, Niall?
Yeah, as we mentioned, this is a very touchy subject in which I will play the devil's advocate. I think the current age standard should be raised to reflect modern times. When the free subway ride system was introduced back in 1984, people aged 65 and older made up only 4% of the population. Last year, that figure rose to 21%, which is a 5-fold increase. Korea is heading towards a very super age society, so continuing the same benefit may worsen deficits. Massive losses are reportedly leading to delayed investments, which can threaten public safety. They are related. In Seoul, aging subway facilities are said to be a serious issue.
So the fiscal aspect of it might be not as practical to continue what some might see as a bit outdated. So what are your thoughts on this?
To counter what Niall just said, under the current law, the threshold for being classified as an elderly or senior is set at 65. So in reality, many people actually retire before reaching that age, around 60. And a large number of seniors, that is age 65 and older, either have no stable source of income or rely on low-paying, unstable jobs such as public work programs. Now, raising the eligibility age to 70 would inevitably place an additional burden on older adults in that age group. This is especially concerning given that South Korea has one of the highest elderly poverty rates among developed countries.
Right, so this comes down to a difficult act of balancing fiscal sustainability and protecting vulnerable seniors. And another idea being discussed is limiting the benefit to only during the busiest parts of the day. So what do you think about free rides being restricted during rush hour then, Niall?
Yes, this is the one that has been discussed with the president as well. During peak commuting hours, subway trains can become dangerously crowded, whether with seniors or not. In busy transfer stations, there's also a greater risk of accidents as well. And restricting free rides during those hours could reduce the crowding as well as make some benefits financially. This argument suggested seniors traveling for work purposes may have enough financial means to pay for the fare. That
makes sense. I'm guessing people are most triggered during work hours anyway. So what are your thoughts on this?
You know, this question can be easily answered just by looking at how many free riders take subways during rush hour.
True.
Seniors account for roughly 8% of total passengers, which is about 19 people per train car at most. Now, even if those passengers were removed, it would not significantly ease congestion levels and crowding. Other measures such as increasing train frequency or encouraging remote work should be considered instead. Furthermore, the Korean Senior Citizens Association has already advised elderly citizens to avoid using public transportation during commuting hours whenever possible. And so far, there have not been any cases reported of seniors becoming a source of delay, discomfort, or even crowding during peak hours.
So then that raises the question of whether such a change would meaningfully reduce crowding. And some say a more targeted approach would be to preserve the benefit for perhaps lower income seniors. So then what do you think about free rides being based on the seniors' income then, Niall?
I do think this is a reasonable approach, and other countries such as United States and France already started implementing these different benefits depending on the senior's income level or age. According to the Korea Transport Institute, limiting benefits to the bottom 70% income group could reduce free ride losses by 72% by 2030 compared to the current system.
Okay, what are your thoughts on this?
I would like to slightly disagree again. The problem is that determining seniors' income levels would require enormous administrative resources and even budget spending. There would also likely be significant complaints over the fairness regarding asset and income criteria. Now, this is the most important part. We need to consider why this policy was put into place in the first place, stepping aside from economic losses. Now, the purpose was to help prevent social isolation and deteriorating health among older adults, and to encourage them to become more active by, moving around, meeting their peers, and enjoying their retired life a little more by, just reducing the burden of actually paying a small amount of transportation fee.
Right. So now that we're actually talking about the pros and cons, it's clear that each proposal has clear advantages and drawbacks, and there's no easy solution to this. So ultimately, the challenge will be finding a policy that is both financially sustainable and also fair to all older citizens. So to get a personal perspective on this debate, we're going to talk to a senior citizen, and that conversation will take place right after the break, so don't go anywhere.
NewsGen wants to hear from you. Go to YouTube and search out channel Arirang News. Click Posts and cast your vote in the poll. Make a new type of news with us.
Joining us today is Sarah, who is directly also affected by the free subway policy. So hello, thank you so much for connecting with us today.
No, thank you for asking me.
Right, so Sarah, how often do you personally take advantage of the free subway benefit, and when do you typically use a subway?
I do drive in Seoul, but probably 80% of the time I take public transportation. I don't like crowds, so I very rarely would go during the peak rush hour times, but otherwise almost every day I'm out on public transportation.
That's good to hear, Sarah. How do you think the free subway ride policy can be reformed, and how does Korea's free subway benefit compare with the support for seniors in the U.S.?
In the U.S., I think one of the differences is our federal government doesn't control the policies. It's by state or county or city. So it's not the same everywhere. And most places, or many places, we don't even have good public transportation like Korea. Korea has amazing public transportation. But our system more often is 50-50, 50% off on a bus as well as 50% off on a subway. And that seems to work well. It's free for other groups, veterans, handicapped people often have totally free public transportation service. So that would be one of the differences. Also in the States, our benefits extend to tourists as well. In Korea, only citizens and permanent residents get that benefit. But in the States, it's also available for tourists. All you have to have is a passport to prove your age. And as you mentioned earlier, I think the issue in Korea especially is because the retirement age is so early. People are on fixed incomes, and not only are they forced to or encouraged to retire what I would call early at age 60, whereas in the States we don't have mandatory retirement ages, that salaries often are reduced as you approach retirement age. So that fixed income gets really shrunken, and I think it really is difficult for a lot of people if they had to pay for the transportation.
Thank you so much for that insight. The last question we have for you today is, what do other seniors that you personally know think about this issue?
Well, I asked several people, and some were quite strong in their opinions, and they said, we've paid taxes all our lives, we've paid taxes for 40 years, and we ought to get some benefits now. Many said they would support a 50-50 rate like we have in the U.S., 50% on all public transportation, not just on the subways. And I think, as you mentioned, traveling during less crowded times would also work. But I think 100% of the people that I talked to said, we need that, or we want that benefit to continue.
Right, and I can see why, honestly. Right, so thank you so much for sharing your insights with us today, Sarah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We just heard from a senior citizen about how often she uses the free subway benefit, what she typically uses it for, and how she believes the policy could be reformed, and what other seniors around her think about this issue. So it is a debate that affects a significant number of people and highlights the challenge of balancing support for older citizens with financial sustainability. So we also wanted to hear directly from our viewers. So we ran a poll on the Arirang News YouTube channel asking, should free subway rides for seniors be restricted? And here's what the results showed. So a majority, 74%, said the benefit should be maintained as it is, while 26% said some form of restriction is needed. So the results suggest that despite growing concerns over costs and also congestion, many people still see free subway rides as an important form of support for older citizens. So Kyun, what was your biggest takeaway then from today's discussion? We talked about different views and different, solutions that could come out of this.
A lot of things, but I think there is there's a huge gap and clashing ideas among different generations, which is the case for not just Korea, but I guess all across the world. And there is no one-size-fits-all solution that can satisfy each and every party. And it's really difficult to look at the past and the future when we're living in such a busy present life and we're so tied to all these things that are happening right now. It's hard to look forward, even in our futures as well, and the past of the older generations. However, we need to take into account the significant portion of free rides take up from the total deficits of railway transit systems, because it can directly relate to the safety of all passengers. Niall just mentioned this in the beginning of the program. Having insufficient funds can delay upgrading old subways, and right now in the Seoul metropolitan subways, there are many old subways that need to be fixed. And also restoring facilities may take much longer, which in turn can cause many safety problems for all the passengers, including the seniors who get free rides. Now, looking at ways of sustaining the overall public transport system seems like the more important thing to look at in the long run for the convenience of all passengers, regardless of age. And just like what Sarah mentioned, perhaps giving 50% discount to all the seniors like they do in the States.
I thought that was a really good idea
that could really help
yeah.
because, I mean, for people like the people who actually pay the full fare, looking at seniors and thinking, hey, they pay nothing at all. They get free rides and they take up all the seats, for example. And like especially during commuting hours, it gets really crowded. So I fully understand where the other side are coming from, thinking, you know, they're taking advantage of all of us. You know, we don't have a very bright future either. But then for seniors as well, I mean, they're saying, hey, we've paid tax all our lives. This is just a small benefit they're receiving from this country.
Right.
Are we asking for too much? But right now, if you look at the demographics, yes, looking at numbers, how much losses, deficits, this is all going into, we need to consider, oh, maybe, I love that advice of giving just 50% discounts, and even more to the lower income bracket, perhaps. But just the fact that they get to use all subways for free gives up a different kind of connotation, you know. So I think giving discounts could be perhaps a better option moving forward for Korea.
Right, and I thought what's great about that idea is that you're not taking the benefit away from a certain group of people by doing that. So I thought that was a good idea. So what are your thoughts on this?
I think the key word for today is actually looking at it from a community perspective and how long we can sustain this for. And we mentioned the aging society, and in certain regions in Korea now the age for young adults have also been lifted, I think as far up as 45. And we've covered that on News Gen before as well. People are living healthily up to even 100. They call it the 100 years era. And I think raising the threshold is something that we may have to accept in the future. When it comes to when we will do that is bringing up whole new different debates. But this would apply to our generation as well. I am not trying to exclude any age group in the current state, but younger generations that will come in the future, for example, children of millennials and Gen Z, will have to pay even a bigger sum of money to cover for this. So yes, I agree to this in a way that applies to all of us, including myself, and the population decline, other changes. The millennial and Gen Z generation does have to take this on in a financial way for the future. And we are trying our best to contribute to society, whether it be with taxes, national pensions, and even with the subway system. So even if it does affect our lives, perhaps, as Kyun mentioned, looking at it differently from different earning groups, that would be necessary. But this change overall is inevitable.
Right, so South Korea's free subway policy for seniors reflects a broader challenge facing an aging society, how to support older citizens while keeping public services financially sustainable. So whether the solution is raising the eligibility age or introducing income-based benefits, any reform will require difficult trade-offs. So whatever changes are made, the debate highlights the importance of finding a balance between fiscal responsibility and also respect for the elderly. And that brings us to the end of today's episode of News Generation. But News Gen will be back tomorrow at 10:30 a.m. Korea time with more stories and discussions. A big thanks to Kyun.
It's always a pleasure.
And also Niall.
Good to be here.
And to our viewers, thank you so much for watching. And hopefully your next subway ride has enough seats to go around for everyone without having to debate who deserves it more. We are News Generation.
Whoever wears the crown must bear its weight. What did the weight of the golden crown mean to the rulers of Silla 1500 years ago? When it was first excavated, the golden crown was found flattened and folded into a cone shape, covering the face of the deceased. This dazzling artifact wasn't merely a funerary object placed to guard the tomb, or a true crown that once stood at the very peak of living power. Those who believe it was worn point to its tree-shaped ornaments, arguing that silver was mixed in, allowing the decorations to stand firm without bending. The exact purpose remains unknown, a symbol of royal authority and life, and as a final gesture of respect, being placed over the face to honor him with the highest form of tribute. The gold belt discovered alongside the crown likewise attests to the sacred authority of its wearer. Each shimmering gold plate is etched with symbols of authority. The golden crown and belt hallmarks of Silla's golden age and flourishing renaissance still rate an enduring golden presence today. Only those who bore its weight could possess the Silla's crown and belt, a dazzling testament to Silla's enduring legacy.